Hey everyone, welcome to this video, and today we are going to learn about a modern backend framework that brings together multi-agent orchestration, APIs, event handling, and background jobs, everything under one unified system. And in order to learn this, we are going to build a multi-agent orchestration system that you can expose via an API and use it anywhere. So let me quickly show you a demo of how it works. So right now I'm in my cursor ID. I'll go through the entire code and all the steps on how you can build it, and so that you would understand better about the framework in a hands-on manner. But first, let's see how exactly it works and what output it can produce. So to start the workflow, all I need to do is to npm run dev. So this starts my workflow, or let's say my Workbench has started at port 3000. So let me go back to the browser, and I think, yeah, so this is my Workbench. So the framework that we're using to build all of this is Motia, and this Workbench is provided out of the box. So as soon as you start your workflow, you have a Workbench where you can visualize and see all the steps and everything that is there in a workflow, right? So in our case, we have these multiple steps. So the first step is basically an API, which is exposed to the user. And since it's a content generation system, what the user needs to send here is linked to any long form content, right? So we are going to use this long form content. Again, like this is one of the blog posts from our newsletter, and it's about chunking strategies for RAG, right? So we have discussed all of the chunking strategies here, right? And the idea is to, take this long form post and convert it to a Twitter thread and a LinkedIn post, right? So this is exactly what the workflow that is being shown here does. So the first step is to, hit this endpoint and provide a link to the URL. Then we have a scraping step. So basically we are going to use a Firecrawl here, and Firecrawl is going to, scrape all the data from this web page, and it is going to provide us it in an LLM ready format, right? So then we can do anything with it. Once the data is scraped, the next two steps are to, so these are kind of two agentic steps that we have, right? So the first one is going to generate a Twitter thread based on certain examples that we are going to provide here. And similarly, we'll do something for the LinkedIn as well, right? And once both of these are done, we are going to use Typefully, which is a really great tool to schedule posts on Twitter and LinkedIn, right? So we are going to use Typefully and provide the draft that we have generated in these two steps. And Typefully is then going to, schedule it, or the human can easily review like what exactly is happening, right? The same has been represented in this workflow as well, right? The user sends a URL, it hits an API, then Firecrawl scrapes it, then we have two agents to write the two posts, and then we schedule it, right? And then the user can go to Typefully and review it, right? So coming back to the Workbench, what I'm going to do now is Motia also provide you an endpoint to test out like everything that you're building, right? So in this case, our API just needs a link to this blog post URL. So I'm gonna take this and put it here, run the workflow. And as you can see, the best part here is I'm also able to, trace and see everything that is happening in my workflow, like what step are running, how much time each step is taking, right? What is the current status of each step? API was hit, scraping already finished, right? So it shows you like all the individual log for each of the step here as well, right? So everything is being observed and traced. Then we were able to generate the Twitter post. Then we were able to generate the LinkedIn post, and both of them were scheduled as well, right? So now if I go to Typefully, which is the software that we're using, or the tool we are using for scheduling, we have the two draft ready here, right? So this is the Twitter draft. So based on some prompts and some details that I provided, it was able to, exactly replicate the way I typically write my threads, right? So it was able to break down it into multiple tweets in the thread. Also find the corresponding, the image or the URL to the image so that it can be displayed here as well, right? So this is the Twitter thread that is automatically generated from this blog post URL. Similarly, we also did it for LinkedIn as well. So LinkedIn takes in a long form post, and on the basis of that, it was able to create a draft for LinkedIn as well. So I hope you liked it. And so as I mentioned earlier, the target of building this workflow is to understand this new framework and how it works. Now, if you would carefully see, you would realize like step is the fundamental unit here, right? So first of all, we are going to understand what does a step mean in Motia. So we'll understand it by looking at typical definition of a step, right? So there are two things that you need to write in every step. The first thing is configuration, right? So this configuration basically specify what kind of step it is, the name of the step, and the topic it's subscribed to, right? So every step has to either subscribe to a topic or emit a topic or do both, right? So if it's the first step of your workflow, then it means that it would be taking data from the user. It just need to emit some data for a subsequent step. Similarly, if it's the last step, it just need to subscribe to a previous step's topic so that it can take data from there and execute whatever it needs to do or whatever logic it has inside its handler. So I'll come to the handler very soon, right? So this is how, so it's fairly simple, just a way of, for us to know like how we stitch together multiple steps in our workflow. So once you have configuration defined, it tells us like everything about the step, from where it is taking input and where it is going to, give the output to the next step that are part of the workflow, right? Next thing is handler. Now handler is something where you write the core logic of your step. Like if it is given an input data, how it should be processing it and then providing data to the subsequent steps. So the handler is going to take two arguments. One is input, which is basically the data that is that this step is going to consume. And the second thing is context. Now this context is something that is going to be shared across multiple steps in our workflow, right? And you can use context to, share data with other steps by emitting it through context. And you can also, have a trace ID so that you can track the operation of each step in your workflow. Similarly, you can, add some persistent data to your context, and you can also record some important information through logging. And all of this is also done via context, right? So this context, you can think of something that is common and that is shared across your entire workflow, right? We'll use this context to communicate between different steps, right? All right, so fundamentally, we just need to define a configuration. We need to have a handler that actually contains all the logic inside the step, right? So this can be anything, like you can create an API here, you can create an agent here, or you can start any sort of job that you want to here. All of this can be done, right? It's fairly generic and quite flexible. So anything or any logic that you want to put in here, whether it is deterministic or whether it is using some LLM and it is something that probabilistic that is or agentic that is happening inside it, all of that can be done. So now that you have some idea about the step, don't get confused. Like once we go through the actual workflow, you would understand the benefits of dividing it into these two things, right? So let me get back to the code and see like each step in our workflow. So as you can see, the first step in here is an API step. So this is how you define it, right? So since this is the first step in our workflow and we are exposing a post endpoint through it, right? So there are a few standard things that you need to define, like the request body, success response, error response, and stuff like that, right? And in configuration, as I said, you also need to define the type of the step. Since this is an API, so the type is going to be API. You provide the name for it, and the path at which you can hit it, like let's say localhost 3000/generate content is where you are going to send request to this API. And a few other standard things like the response schema, body schema. And important thing to note here is like what topic does this emit, right? So this is an API step, right? And it emits a topic called scrape article, right? So anything that is going to consume data or the output of this step must subscribe to this topic. So as we know, the next step in our workflow after the API is Firecrawl scrape, right? So if we go to the steps here and see the scraping step, right? We'll first check like what it's subscribed to, right? So it is subscribing to the scrape article topic, right? So this basically tells our system that, okay, how these steps are arranged and what step is taking input from its previous step and what exactly it is emitting for its next step, right? So this is done through subscribe and emits. So in this case, as we see in the handler, in the input, we are going to receive everything that we got from the API, which is the URL to the blog post. And we are going to, again, use Firecrawl to scrape the web, right? And from the input, we have the URL and we have the scrape result. And the scrape result is, again, using Firecrawl, you can make any website in LLM ready format. And we are going to have it in markdown format. So all the content of the blog is currently in markdown format. I have the entire text, the URL to all the images and everything, so that I can use it to craft my thread or my LinkedIn post, right? Important thing to note here is you also make sure that you emit data and the topic for the next step. So in this case, it is going to emit the topic which is called generate content, and the data which would basically contain the request ID, the URL, title, content. So this step is going to output all the content that is scraped from this website, and any subsequent step that wants to use this data has to subscribe to this topic. Now, if you see in our workflow, we have two steps that should be using this data. One is, the Twitter thread writer, and another one is LinkedIn content generator or the LinkedIn post generator. So let's go and check what we have in those two steps. So first, let's check the Twitter content generation step. So we have the generate Twitter step, and this is all the logic. As I said, it should be subscribing to the generate content topic, which was emitted by the scraping step. And if we do that, we will have access to all the data that the step emitted, and we are going to consume that data inside the handler. And inside the handler is based, we write all the logic. So let's say we have the row scrape result from the website, and then we are also taking help of some prompts that basically specify how we should be writing the Twitter thread or the LinkedIn thread, right? So I have provided, so it's like, a few short prompting that we are doing. We are providing examples of some previous post, like how we typically, or let's say how I typically break down any topic into a Twitter thread, right? So it is learning from these examples, and the rest of the things are fairly simple, right? I mean, you're just taking this input, you have the Twitter prompt that we read from this file, and then we are using Ollama. So basically you can use any LLM here. If you want to use OpenAI, you can also use that, but I was preferring to use local LLMs here because it's a fairly simple thing. You have some raw context, you have some examples, just create a prompt that based on these examples and based on the context provided, you craft me a new Twitter post, right? So this is exactly what we are doing in here, right? And as always, we also need to emit the data for the next step or the topic for the next step, right? So in this case, the topic that we are going to emit is Twitter schedule, right? So the scheduler step is going to consume this topic, and it is going to have access to all the data, right? So main thing that you need to look at here is the Twitter content, right? So based on the raw results and the prompt engineering that we did, we have already created a draft for our Twitter thread, right? And this is going to be used by the scheduling step. So if I check the Twitter scheduling step, now interesting thing to note here is, so I deliberately wrote the scheduling step in TypeScript, right? So this is the beauty of Motia, right? It does not force you to just use a single language, since we can build APIs, multi-agent orchestration, and a lot of other things. The another great part about using Motia is you can also use multiple languages in the same workflow, right? So I kind of liked the Typefully's TypeScript API more than what they have in the Python, right? So I tried to use that. I found some code for it and just, made sure like how I can put it inside Motia. So I did that. But however, if you really wanted to do it in Python, you can also do that. So that is not a problem, right? So similar to what we just saw in Python, we first need to define a config wherein we have the type, the name, what it's subscribed to. Since it's a Twitter scheduling step, it's subscribed to the topic that was emitted by the Twitter thread generator, right? Which is a Twitter scheduler. And yeah, so in here we have some TypeScript logic wherein we are going to make an API call to Typefully to create a draft over there so that the user can review and schedule it, right? Similarly, it's exactly same what we are doing for LinkedIn as well, right? So the LinkedIn and Twitter steps are executing in parallel, as you can see here in the workflow as well. So these are the generation steps that are executing in parallel, and then they are sending it out to the post that we generate to be scheduled through Typefully. So yeah, similarly, I have also written the LinkedIn scheduling step as well in Typefully in TypeScript. And yeah, so that's about the workflow, and this is how it works. And I've already shown you the draft that we were able to create using this. And just to remind, like we also get a workbench out of the box. Like as soon as you do npm run dev, it is going to start this workbench. And the best part is inside this workbench, you have everything that you need. You can visualize the entire workflow, understand like what exactly is happening inside your workflow. And we also get an inbuilt logging and tracing. So basically Motia comes with a built-in observability as well, right? So I can look at individual traces, like what happened inside them, and then I can go to individual steps, like what is happening inside them, how much time they're taking and all, right? So it's fairly easy for a developer to understand what's happening inside the workflow, check like if one of the step is becoming a time bottleneck for him, or let's say if they just want to debug stuff, right? So that can also be easily done. And it also provides a nice endpoint for all the APIs or all the workflows that you're creating here, right? So you can right away test them here as well. And I think there's a bit of learning curve to understand Motia, but it is fairly simple. You just need to understand the philosophy of a step, how a step subscribe to a topic, how it emits topic to the next step that is part of the workflow or the subsequent steps. And you just need to understand that it's a handler, and inside the handler the user can write any logic that they want, right? So which is really great. And I believe like this is probably the only framework that you'll ever need to learn, right? In this age of AI. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll also share all this code with you. Do check out Motia's GitHub repo. Like I really liked it, and they have given some great examples as well for you to try out inside it, right? And along with that, they have a really good documentation as well to understand the philosophy, like what all these things mean, like steps, handlers, context, topics, and stuff like that, right? So it's fairly easy to understand. I encourage you to try it out. And in case if you have any doubts, I've shared all the code. Make sure that you create an issue. I'll try to help you out with that. But apart from that, all the instructions are provided in that code, and it's fairly easy to understand. You can just check it out, and it's available on our AI Engineering Hub repo, right? So this is where you can find all the code and all the instruction on how you can get up and running with what we just saw today. So yeah, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something new. And make sure that you also like and repost it so that it can also reach others in your network as well. And I'll see you in another video. Thank you so much for watching.